Have you ever felt that true love can completely change the course of your life? This is the story of Daniel, a successful businessman from London, and Lily, an innocent young woman from a small English village, whose lives intertwined in a way neither expected. It's a tale of passion, pain, redemption, and a love that will make you reflect on the transformative power of genuine feelings. Where are you watching us from? Let us know your city or country in the comments below. And if this story moves you as much as it moves us, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Now, let's begin this intense story. The unexpected encounter. Daniel Harrison's penthouse in the exclusive Mayfair district gleamed under the golden lights of the London sunset. At 42, Daniel had built a real estate empire that allowed him to live in one of the capital's most expensive areas. His hands, toughened by years of hard work before achieving success, now handled multi-million-pound contracts with the same skill with which they once wielded construction tools. That Friday afternoon, after a particularly intense week negotiating a large-scale project, Daniel climbed the Italian marble stairs of his penthouse with tense shoulders and a mind still saturated with figures and deadlines. The sound of his Italian leather shoes echoed in the elegant silence of his home. As he opened the door, the familiar scent of lemon and lavender greeted him, mixing with something he couldn't quite identify, something sweet and fresh he'd never noticed before. His eyes, accustomed to analyzing every detail in his business, fell upon a figure he had seen hundreds of times, but for the first time, he truly observed. Lily Green stood with her back to him, cleaning the large windows that opened onto the terrace. She was 19, though her face retained an innocence that made her seem even younger. Her light brown hair, pulled back in a high ponytail, shimmered with golden highlights under the sunlight filtering through the glass. She wore a simple uniform that failed to conceal her slender figure, and as she stretched to reach the top of the window, Daniel felt something strange in his chest. "Good afternoon, Mr. Harrison," Lily said as she turned, her cheeks flushing a soft pink as she noticed the intensity of his gaze. Her eyes, a clear green like the meadows of her native countryside, quickly darted away, and Daniel saw her clench the cleaning cloth in her slightly trembling hands. "Lily," he replied, and for the first time, he realized how musical her name sounded on his lips. "How long have you been working here?" "6 months, sir," she answered, looking down. Daniel noticed her long, dark eyelashes, which framed her eyes in a way that inexplicably unsettled him. For those 6 months, Lily had been a silent, efficient presence. He knew she was a student, that she came from some small village, but he had never bothered to learn more details. Now, truly seeing her for the first time, he wondered how he could have been so blind. "Are you having dinner tonight?" he asked suddenly, surprising himself with the question. Lily looked up, her eyes reflecting confusion and something that might have been hope. "No, sir. I usually grab something quick before going home to study." Daniel took a step closer and could smell her soft perfume, a mix of glycerin soap and something floral he couldn't identify, but which irresistibly drew him in. "Would you like to have dinner with me tonight?" The question left his lips before he could think twice. The cloth dropped from Lily's hands to the floor, her cheeks completely flushed, and Daniel saw her chest rise and fall with quick, nervous breaths. "I don't know if that would be appropriate, Mr. Harrison." "Daniel," he corrected her, taking another step towards her. "Call me Daniel." Lily visibly swallowed, and when she looked up to meet his gaze directly, Daniel felt as if an electric current shot through him. There was something in those green eyes, a purity and vulnerability that attracted him like a magnet. "Daniel," she repeated softly, and the name sounded different on her lips, more intimate, more real. That night, as he prepared the most elaborate dinner he had made in months, Daniel couldn't stop wondering what this clear-eyed young woman had awakened in him. And as Lily changed out of her uniform into a simple dress that enhanced her natural beauty, her hands trembled at the thought that she was about to dine alone with the man who, unbeknownst to him, had occupied her thoughts for the past few months. When they sat face to face at the elegant mahogany dining table, both knew that something fundamental had just changed between them, though neither could imagine the extent to which that dinner would transform their lives forever. A fragile hope, the dinner passed in an atmosphere charged with electricity. Lily kept her hands clasped in her lap, nervous about being seated as a guest in a place where she had always been an employee. Daniel, for his part, found that every word that left the young woman's lips fascinated him more. "Tell me about your family," Daniel asked as he poured red wine into his glass, noting that Lily had politely declined alcohol. "We live in a small village in the Cotswolds," Lily began, her voice softening as she spoke of home. "My father, Mr. Thomas, works on the farm, and my mother, Mrs. Mary, takes care of the house and helps at the church." Daniel watched as Lily's eyes lit up when she spoke of her family, and he felt a strange pang, imagining the simplicity of a life so different from his own. "And you came to London to study?" "Yes, I'm studying teaching at University College London," Lily replied, and for the first time, she smiled naturally. "I always wanted to be a teacher. I want to go back to the village and teach the children. It's my dream." The purity of that dream hit Daniel like a slap. When he was 19, he had already known the streets, fought to survive, lost his innocence long ago. But Lily spoke of her aspirations with a faith that moved and disturbed him at the same time. "Have you never thought of staying in London? There are more opportunities here," he suggested. Lily shook her head, and a lock of hair escaped from her high ponytail, framing her face in a way that made Daniel's heart race. "London is beautiful, but it's not my place. I belong to the land, to simplicity. My family needs me." "And don't you feel lonely here?" The question made Lily look down, and Daniel saw her cheeks flush. "Sometimes," she admitted softly. "It's very different from everything I knew. People here are different." "Different how?" Lily took her time to answer, as if searching for the right words. "More experienced. I come from a place where things are simpler. Where—" She stopped, clearly embarrassed. Daniel leaned forward. "Where what, Lily?" "Where girls wait for the right man," she whispered, and her cheeks flushed completely. The confession hit Daniel like lightning. He suddenly understood Lily's shyness, her way of looking away, her nervousness. She was a virgin. At 19, in the 21st century, this beautiful young woman had preserved her innocence. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was expectant, full of possibilities. Daniel felt he was on the edge of a precipice, and for the first time in years, he wasn't sure he wanted to maintain control. "Lily," he finally said, and his voice sounded hoarser than he intended. She looked up, and in her green eyes, he saw his own desire reflected, mixed with fear and something that might have been hope. "Yes?" Daniel rose from his chair and walked around the table. Lily didn't move, but her breathing quickened as he approached. With a delicacy he didn't know he possessed, Daniel reached out and gently caressed Lily's cheek. "You are extraordinary," he murmured. Lily closed her eyes at the touch, and Daniel felt he was touching something sacred, something he had never experienced. When she opened her eyes again, the decision was already made in both of them. "I don't know what's happening," Lily whispered, "but I don't want it to stop." Daniel knew he was about to cross a line that would change everything. Lily was his employee. She was too young. She was innocent. But at that moment, none of that mattered. Only the two of them existed, and the connection that had emerged like a flame in the darkness. When their lips met, Daniel knew he was lost. The harsh reality. Daniel's first caress awakened sensations in Lily she had never imagined. His lips were soft, yet firm. And when he kissed her, she felt as if her entire world had shrunk to that moment, to that connection that made her tremble. "Are you sure?" he asked, pulling back just enough to look into her eyes. His hands framed Lily's face with a tenderness that contrasted with the passion he saw in his gaze. Lily nodded, though her heart pounded so hard she feared he could hear it. Her whole life she had imagined this moment, but she had always projected it into a distant future, with the man who would become her husband. She never thought it would be in a London penthouse, with a man she had just truly discovered, but who had occupied her thoughts for months. "I've never," she began to say, but Daniel gently placed a finger on her lips. "I know," he murmured, and in his voice was a mix of tenderness and something deeper that Lily couldn't identify. "We'll go slow." Daniel led her to his bedroom, and Lily felt as if she were walking in a dream. The room was elegant, masculine, with large windows showcasing the lights of London stretching to the horizon, but she only had eyes for the man who looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. With trembling hands, Lily began to unbutton her dress, but Daniel stopped her movements. "Allow me," he said softly, and proceeded to undress her with exquisite slowness, as if unwrapping an invaluable gift. Every caress from Daniel was a revelation for Lily. Her body responded in ways she didn't know, and when he laid her on the bed, with the delicacy of someone handling something fragile, she felt as if she were giving not just her body, but her entire soul. "You are perfect," Daniel whispered against her ear, and Lily felt the words etched into her heart forever. The intimacy that followed was an awakening for both. For Lily, the loss of her virginity was not the pain she had feared, but a transformation that took her from the girl she had been to the woman she was destined to be. Daniel, as experienced as he was, had never felt such a profound connection. Lily's total surrender, her absolute trust, moved him in a way he had never experienced. When it was all over, Lily curled against Daniel's chest, listening to his heartbeats as he gently stroked her hair. She felt different, as if she had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. "What are you thinking about?" Daniel asked, noticing that Lily was awake. "That everything has changed," she answered honestly, "and that I don't regret it." Daniel felt his chest tighten. Lily's honesty, her ability to surrender completely without reservations, scared him as much as it attracted him. He was accustomed to uncomplicated relationships, to women who understood the rules of the game. But Lily didn't know those rules, and he had just changed her life forever. Lily began to speak, but she sat up to look at him, and the vulnerability in her eyes left him speechless. "What are we going to do now?" she asked, and in her voice was a mix of hope and fear that broke Daniel's heart. He had no answer. For the first time in years, Daniel Harrison, the man who always had a plan, found himself completely lost. He only knew that something fundamental had changed that night, and that nothing would ever be the same. As Lily fell asleep in his arms, trusting and at peace, Daniel remained awake for hours, battling the demons that began to whisper in his ear about the complications he had just created in his perfectly ordered life, a desperate secret. Daniel woke before dawn with a sense of panic he hadn't experienced in years. The gray light of dawn filtered through the curtains, and when he looked towards the side of the bed where Lily slept soundly, curled up like a child, the magnitude of what he had done hit him like a punch to the stomach. He had taken his employee's virginity, a 19-year-old girl who depended on him to survive in London, an innocent student who had probably confused physical attraction with love. He got up silently and went to the bathroom, avoiding looking at Lily's serene face. Under the cold shower, he tried to think clearly. He was a 42-year-old man, experienced enough to know that what had happened the night before had been a monumental mistake. Lily was not like the sophisticated women he usually associated with. She had given something that is only given once, and he had taken it without thinking of the consequences. When he came out of the bathroom, he found Lily awake, sitting on the bed with the sheets covering her body. Her brown hair fell in waves over her bare shoulders, and her green eyes looked at him with a mixture of shyness and happiness that intensified Daniel's guilt. "Good morning," she said softly, and a timid smile lit up her face. "Lily," Daniel began, and she must have noticed something in his tone, because the smile gradually faded. "What's wrong?" she asked, sitting up slightly, and Daniel saw her hands clench the sheets. Daniel approached his wardrobe and began to dress, turning his back to her because he couldn't bear to see the hope in her eyes. What happened last night was a mistake. The silence that followed was so deep that Daniel could hear his own heart beating. When he turned around, he saw that Lily had completely paled. "A mistake?" she repeated softly, as if she hadn't understood the words. "Yes," Daniel said, forcing a firmness he didn't feel. "You're too young. You work for me. Things got complicated, and it shouldn't have happened." Lily got out of bed, wrapped in the sheet, and Daniel saw her legs tremble slightly. "But I thought," she began, but stopped, biting her lower lip. "What did you think?" Daniel asked, though he knew he was behaving cruelly. "I thought it meant something to you," Lily whispered, her voice breaking at the end. Daniel felt as if a dagger had been plunged into his chest, but he forced himself to maintain a cold expression. "Lily, you're a beautiful girl, but this cannot continue. You'll continue working here, but what happened last night won't happen again." He saw Lily's eyes fill with tears she refused to shed. Her chin trembled, but she held her head high with a dignity that made Daniel feel like the worst of villains. "I understand," she said finally, in a voice so low he barely heard her. Daniel picked up his briefcase and headed for the door, but stopped without turning. "I'll be out all day. When I return, I expect everything to be back to normal." After Daniel left, Lily collapsed onto the bed and finally allowed tears to stream freely down her cheeks. She had given herself completely to a man who saw her as a mistake. She had lost her virginity to someone who now rejected her as if it had meant nothing. She dressed slowly. Every movement reminded her of the previous night, when those same hands that now trembled had been caressed with tenderness. She gathered her things and left the apartment, knowing that when she returned the next day for work, she would have to pretend nothing had happened. But something had happened, something that had changed not only her body, but her heart. And now she would have to find a way to live with the consequences of trusting the wrong man. Meanwhile, Daniel sat in his office, unable to concentrate on any document. He couldn't stop thinking about Lily's devastated expression, how she had trembled when he rejected her. For the first time in his life, he had hurt someone deeply, and he didn't know if he could live with that guilt. The unspoken truth. The following weeks unfolded in an atmosphere of tension that could be cut with a knife. Lily returned to work the next day, punctual as always, but something fundamental had changed in her. Her spontaneous smile had vanished, replaced by a cold, professional courtesy that hurt Daniel more than he was willing to admit. Every morning, Lily arrived with slightly swollen eyes, as if she had spent the night crying. But she maintained her composure with a dignity that surprised Daniel. She performed her duties with the same efficiency as always, but now she avoided any eye contact and responded to his attempts at conversation with polite monosyllables. "Lily," Daniel tried one afternoon, finding her cleaning the library. "How are your studies going?" "Fine, Mr. Harrison," she replied, without looking up from the books she was organizing. The return to formal address was like a slap for Daniel. After hearing his name on Lily's lips with such sweetness, the distant Mr. Harrison sounded like a condemnation. Daniel began bringing women home on weekends, elegant and sophisticated executives his age, who perfectly understood the rules of the game. But when he saw Lily's expression upon encountering these visitors on Monday mornings, when he noticed how she pressed her lips together and how her hands trembled slightly as she collected the wine glasses left on the tables, he felt like a complete bastard. One of those mornings, as Lily cleaned up evidence of the previous night, Daniel heard her sob very softly in the bathroom. The sound of her muffled cries pierced him like a dagger, and he had to leave the house so as not to run to her and beg for forgiveness on his knees. Lily, for her part, struggled daily with the decision to quit. Every time she saw Daniel with other women, every time she heard their laughter from the room she had once shared with him, she felt as if her heart were being ripped from her chest. But she needed the job, and more importantly, she needed to prove to herself that she was stronger than she had believed. The nights were the worst. In her small apartment, which she shared with 2 other students, Lily stayed awake recalling every caress, every sweet word Daniel had whispered to her. She wondered how she could have been so naive, how she could have mistaken desire for love. One night, while studying for an exam, she felt a sudden nausea that forced her to run to the bathroom. At first, she thought it was stress, the sadness that had accompanied her for weeks. But when the nausea repeated for several consecutive days, a terrible suspicion began to form in her mind. She bought a pregnancy test with trembling hands, her heart pounding so hard she feared it would explode. When she saw the 2 lines that confirmed her worst fears, she collapsed on the bathroom floor and cried until she had no more tears. She was pregnant with Daniel's child, pregnant with the child of the man who had rejected her, who had called their night a mistake, who now brought other women to the bed where she had lost her virginity. For a whole week, Lily carried the secret like a rock in her chest. She saw Daniel every day, maintained her professional facade, but inside she was crumbling. How was she going to tell him? How was she going to face his rejection again? Finally, one Friday afternoon, when Daniel arrived home early, Lily gathered all the courage she had left. "Mr. Harrison," she said, and her voice trembled despite her efforts to maintain composure. "I need to talk to you." Daniel looked up from the papers he was reviewing, and for the first time in weeks, Lily looked him directly in the eyes. "What's wrong?" he asked, and something in Lily's expression must have alerted him, because he stood up immediately. Lily took a deep breath, knowing that the words she was about to utter would change everything once more. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel remained completely motionless, his face so pale that Lily feared he might faint. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded as if it came from very far away. "Are you sure?" Lily nodded, not taking her eyes off his. She had decided that, no matter what happened, she would face this situation with what dignity she had left. Daniel sank heavily into his chair, running his hands through his hair. The weight of the consequences of that night he had tried to forget fell upon him with full force. Not only had he taken Lily's virginity, but now she was carrying his child. And at that moment, looking at the courage with which Lily had faced his rejection for weeks, and now gave him this news, Daniel realized that he had profoundly underestimated the woman in front of him. A battle of wills. Daniel took 3 days to process the news, 3 days during which Lily continued to work normally, although he now noticed details he had previously overlooked. How did she avoid certain food smells? How did she discreetly put a hand to her stomach? How did she seem more fragile, if that was possible? On Tuesday evening, as Lily prepared to leave, Daniel stopped her. "We need to talk," he said. And for the first time in weeks, his voice didn't sound cold. Lily nodded and sat on the edge of the sofa, keeping her back straight and her hands clasped in her lap. Daniel sat opposite her, noticing the dark circles under her green eyes and the paleness of her skin. "How far along are you?" he asked. 6 weeks, Lily replied, and Daniel quickly calculated that it corresponded exactly to the night they had spent together. "Lily," he began, and stopped, struggling with the words. "I know this is complicated." She remained silent, waiting. "I have contacts in the best clinics in London. We can resolve this discreetly, quickly. I'll take care of all expenses, of course." The suggestion hit Lily like a slap. She stood up so abruptly that Daniel startled. "Resolve this," she repeated, and for the first time in weeks, her voice trembled with anger instead of sadness. "Is that what you think of your child? Of my child?" Daniel stood up too, extending his hands in a calming gesture. "Lily, you're 19 years old. Your studies, your future." "My future is my decision," she interrupted him, and her eyes shone with a fierceness Daniel had never seen. "I already made one mistake by giving myself to you. I'm not going to make another. It's not a mistake. It's the most sensible decision." "For you!" Lily shouted, and tears finally began to roll down her cheeks. "For you, it's sensible to get rid of the problem. But I can't. I won't." She brought her hands to her belly in a protective gesture that broke Daniel's heart. "I come from a Catholic family," she continued, her voice breaking. "I've already dishonored my family by doing what I did. I'm not going to add another sin." Daniel took a step closer, but Lily recoiled. "Lily, be reasonable. A baby would change your whole life. You wouldn't be able to finish your studies, go back to your village." "My life already changed," she said, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "It changed the night I trusted you. It changed when you rejected me, and now it's going to change again. But this time, it's going to be for something worthwhile." Daniel felt an unexpected admiration for Lily's determination, mixed with a guilt that gnawed at him. "And what are you going to do? How are you going to raise it alone?" "I don't know," Lily admitted with devastating honesty. "But I'm going to find a way, and I don't need anything from you." "Lily, don't be ridiculous. Of course I'll take responsibility." "No," she interrupted him firmly. "You already made it clear that I was a mistake. I won't allow my child to grow up feeling like a mistake, too." Daniel saw the fierce determination in Lily's eyes and realized he had completely underestimated this young woman. He had expected her to accept his proposal, to be practical. Instead, he was met with a strength of will that humbled him. "At least let me help you financially," he insisted, "for medical expenses, so you don't have to work while you study." Lily looked at him for a long moment, and Daniel saw her struggle with herself. "Only until the end of the semester," she finally said. "After that, I'll manage on my own." Daniel nodded, knowing that was the most he would get from her at that moment. "And Lily," he added as she headed for the door, "you don't have to keep working here if you don't want to." She stopped without turning. "I need the money," she simply said. "But this changes nothing between us. You're still my boss. I'm still your employee. Nothing more." After Lily left, Daniel poured himself a whiskey and stood on the terrace looking at the lights of London. For the first time in his life, he felt completely defeated. Lily had rejected his practical solution, and now he would have to live with the consequences of his actions in a way he hadn't anticipated. But what disturbed him most was the admiration he felt for her. In the most difficult moment of her young life, Lily had shown an integrity and courage that he wasn't sure he possessed, a glimmer of hope. The following months were a silent torture for both of them. Lily continued working in Daniel's apartment, but now there was an invisible barrier between them that neither dared to cross. Daniel kept his word and covered all of Lily's medical expenses, in addition to doubling her salary. But she accepted his help with a coolness that hurt him more than he was willing to admit. As Lily's pregnancy progressed, Daniel found himself constantly observing her. He noticed how her uniform began to fit more snugly in certain areas, how she sometimes unconsciously placed a hand on her belly, how her skin glowed with that radiance pregnant women seem to have. One afternoon, while Lily was cleaning the kitchen, Daniel saw her stop suddenly and put her hand to her stomach with a surprised expression. "Are you okay?" he asked, instinctively moving closer. Lily looked up at him, and for the first time in months, there was something different in her eyes, something akin to wonder. "It moved," she whispered. The baby moved for the first time. Without thinking, Daniel reached out his hand, but stopped halfway when he saw Lily tense. "May I?" he asked, and his voice sounded more vulnerable than he intended. Lily hesitated for a long moment, but finally nodded. Daniel placed his hand on Lily's belly, which already showed a slight but definite curve. For several seconds, nothing happened, and then he felt a gentle movement, as if something small were swimming under his palm. "My God," Daniel murmured, and when he looked up at Lily, he saw tears in her eyes. "It's real," she said softly. "This whole situation has been so surreal that sometimes, but now it's real." Daniel didn't remove his hand. For the first time in months, there was a moment of connection between them, not as boss and employee, not as the man who had rejected her and the hurt woman, but as the future parents of the baby growing between them. "Lily," Daniel began, but she gently pulled away. "I have to keep working," she said, and the barrier rose between them again. But something had changed. Daniel began to ask about her health, about medical appointments, about how she felt. Lily responded with the minimal courtesy necessary, but she no longer completely avoided him. When Lily entered her second trimester, Daniel noticed that she sometimes arrived at work visibly exhausted. One morning, he found her sitting in the kitchen with her head in her hands. "What's wrong?" he asked, alarmed. "Nothing," Lily replied, but when she looked up, Daniel saw that she was pale. "Have you had breakfast?" Lily shook her head, and Daniel felt a pang of irritation mixed with worry. "Lily, you have to take care of yourself, not just for you, but for the baby." "I know," she sighed, "but between studies and work, sometimes I forget." Daniel made a decision. "From tomorrow on, you're going to have breakfast here before you start work, and lunch too." Lily opened her mouth to protest, but Daniel interrupted her. "It's non-negotiable. It's for the baby's health." It was the first time he had directly mentioned the baby as his, and both realized it. Lily nodded silently. The shared breakfasts became a strange routine. At first, they ate in silence, but gradually they began to exchange words. Daniel would ask about her classes. Lily would mention a university project. They were superficial conversations, but it was more than they had shared in months. One morning, Lily arrived with deep, dark circles under her eyes and trembling hands. "What's wrong?" Daniel asked immediately. "I couldn't sleep," Lily admitted. "The baby was moving all night, and I have an important exam today." Daniel studied her for a moment. "Cancel work today. Stay here and rest." "I can't. I need to study." "Study here. There's a room with good light you can use as an office." Lily looked at him in surprise. "Why are you doing this?" Daniel took a moment to respond. "Because that baby is my responsibility too," he finally said. "And why?" "Why do I care about you?" The words came out before he could stop them, and both froze. Lily looked at him with an expression Daniel couldn't interpret. "Don't say that," she finally whispered. "Not if you don't mean it." Daniel felt he had reached a turning point, but he wasn't sure he was ready to cross it. Lily was stronger than he had thought, more dignified, more extraordinary, and he had been a coward. The birth of hope. At 3 in the morning on a Tuesday in January, Daniel's phone rang insistently. When he saw Lily's name on the screen, he knew immediately that the time had come. "Daniel!" Lily's voice sounded tense and frightened. "I think it's time." Daniel dressed faster than he ever had in his life and drove to the small apartment where Lily lived. He found her sitting on the edge of the bed, breathing deeply and clutching the back of a chair. "How far apart are the contractions?" he asked, trying to remain calm, although his heart was pounding frantically. "Every 5 minutes," Lily replied, and Daniel saw tears in her eyes. "I'm scared." Without thinking about the barriers they had maintained between them for months, Daniel approached and gently hugged her. "Everything's going to be okay," he murmured against her hair. "Let's go to the hospital." The car ride was torture. Daniel drove while trying to keep Lily calm, but he himself was terrified. He was going to be a father. After months of emotional distance, reality hit him with full force. At the hospital, for the next 10 hours, Daniel watched Lily transform. The timid young woman he had known disappeared, replaced by a woman of extraordinary strength. Each contraction made her clench her teeth, but she didn't complain. When the pain intensified, she sought Daniel's hand with a trust that both soothed and terrified him. "I can't do this anymore," Lily whispered during a particularly strong contraction. "Yes, you can," Daniel told her, brushing the sweaty hair from her forehead. "You're the strongest woman I know." Lily looked at him with eyes bright with tears and pain, but also with something more, something Daniel didn't dare to interpret. When it was finally time for the birth, Daniel stayed by Lily's side, holding her hand as she found strength she didn't know she had, and when a baby's cries filled the room, both began to cry too. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, and when she placed the tiny baby on Lily's chest, Daniel felt the world stop. His daughter, his perfect little daughter with tiny fingers and dark hair. When the baby opened her eyes, Daniel saw that they were the same clear green as Lily's. "Hello, little one," Lily whispered, and her voice was filled with a love so pure that Daniel felt his heart might explode. "I'm your mommy." "What are you going to name her?" Daniel asked, unable to take his eyes off the perfect creature. "Sophia," Lily replied without hesitation. "Like my grandmother." Daniel extended a finger, and the baby instinctively grasped it. At that moment, all the barriers, all the pain, all the distance he had maintained crumbled. This tiny person was his. She was Lily's. She was theirs. "Sophia," Daniel repeated, and the name sounded perfect on his lips. "Hello, Sophia. I'm your daddy." Lily looked at him when he said those words, and Daniel saw surprise in her eyes. For months, he had emotionally rejected the idea of the baby, had kept his distance. But now, holding his daughter's tiny finger, he couldn't deny the connection he felt. "Do you want to hold her?" Lily asked softly. With trembling hands, Daniel took Sophia into his arms. She was so small, so fragile, but when he looked at her, he saw strength in those green eyes, like her mother's. "I promise you," he whispered to the baby, "that I'm going to make things right. I don't know how, but I'm going to learn." Lily heard the promise, and for the first time in months, she smiled genuinely. She didn't know what it meant for the future, but at that moment, seeing Daniel hold their daughter with such care, she felt that perhaps, just perhaps, things could be different. That night, when Lily and Sophia were finally stable, Daniel stayed in the hospital room watching them sleep. His life had changed irrevocably, and for the first time in months, he wasn't fighting the change. He had a daughter, a beautiful daughter with an extraordinary mother, and now he had to figure out how to be the man both of them deserved. A family forms. The first few months after Sophia's birth were uncharted territory for Daniel. He had insisted that Lily move into a room in his apartment, claiming it was more practical for caring for the baby. But the truth was, he couldn't bear the thought of being away from his daughter. Lily had reluctantly agreed, setting clear rules. She would take full care of Sophia. She didn't need his help, and this was only temporary until she could support herself again. But Daniel found he couldn't stay away. Every cry from Sophia woke him. Every sound from Lily's room alerted him. One night, he heard the baby crying for what seemed like hours, and finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He gently knocked on Lily's door. "Is everything okay?" he asked. "It's fine," Lily replied, but her voice sounded exhausted. "She just has colic." Daniel pushed the door slightly and saw Lily pacing the room, carrying a crying Sophia inconsolably. Lily had deep, dark circles under her eyes and looked exhausted. "When was the last time you slept?" Daniel asked. "I slept a bit yesterday," Lily lied, but Daniel could see she was at her breaking point. "Give me Sophia," he said, extending his arms. "It's not necessary. Lily, you either give her to me, or I'm coming in and taking her myself." Lily looked at him for a moment, saw the determination in his eyes, and finally handed him the baby. Sophia continued to cry in Daniel's arms, but he held her confidently, walking in the same pattern he had seen Lily do. "Go to sleep for a while," he told Lily. "I'll take care of her." Lily wanted to protest, but she was so exhausted that she collapsed onto the bed, fully dressed. Daniel left the room carrying Sophia, who gradually began to calm down. "Shh, little one," Daniel whispered as he walked around the apartment. "Mommy needs to rest. Daddy's going to take care of you." To his surprise, Sophia stopped crying and looked at him with those green eyes so similar to Lily's. Daniel felt a connection so profound, it almost knocked him over. "You're perfect," he murmured to her, "and your mommy is extraordinary. I wish I was half as good as her." That was the first of many nights Daniel got up to help with Sophia. At first, Lily protested, insisting she could do it alone, but gradually she began to accept his help. One morning, Lily found Daniel asleep on the sofa with Sophia nestled on his chest, both breathing peacefully. The image touched her heart in an unexpected way. This was the man who had rejected her, who had called their night a mistake, but now he cared for their daughter with a tenderness that moved her. "Good morning," Daniel said softly, when he realized Lily was watching them. "Good morning," she replied, and for the first time in months, her voice didn't sound cold. "She fell asleep here an hour ago," Daniel explained. "I didn't want to move her." Lily approached and carefully took Sophia, lightly brushing Daniel's hands in the process. The contact surprised them both. "Thank you," Lily said sincerely, "for getting up last night, and all the other nights." Daniel sat up, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "She's my daughter too, Lily. I want to be present." Lily studied him for a moment. "What changed?" she finally asked. "For months you acted as if you didn't want her to exist." Daniel sighed deeply. "I was scared," he admitted. "Scared of not being a good father. Scared of the complications. Scared of feeling too much. And now?" Daniel looked at Sophia, who had begun to make small noises while sleeping. "Now I realize it's too late to be scared. She's here, and she's perfect, and I can't imagine my life without her." Lily felt something loosen in her chest. For months she had carried everything alone. The pregnancy, the birth, the sleepless nights. Now, seeing Daniel talk about Sophia with such love, she began to wonder if perhaps she might not be so alone after all. "Daniel," she replied, Could you help me bathe her today? I'm still nervous doing it alone." The question was a huge step for Lily, and Daniel knew it. It was the first time she had directly asked him for help. The first time she admitted she also had fears. "Of course," he replied, and his smile was the first genuine one Lily had seen in months. As they prepared Sophia's bath together, as Daniel carefully held the baby and Lily gently washed her, both felt that something was beginning to heal between them. They didn't know where it would lead, but for the first time in a long time, they were working together towards something. A dream rekindled. The days began to take on a different rhythm in Daniel's apartment. Lily had temporarily suspended her studies to dedicate herself completely to Sophia. But Daniel noticed that sometimes he would see her reading pedagogy books while the baby slept, as if she couldn't completely abandon her dreams. One afternoon, as Daniel worked in his home office, he heard Lily singing a lullaby in Sophia's room. Her voice was soft and melodious, singing in the regional dialect that sometimes emerged when she was relaxed. Daniel paused his work, captivated by the beauty of the scene he imagined. When the singing stopped, he left his office and found Lily in the kitchen preparing a bottle. "You have a beautiful voice," he said, and Lily blushed slightly. "It's a song my grandmother used to sing to me," she explained. "The same one she sang to the original Sophia." "Tell me about her," Daniel asked, leaning against the counter. "About your grandmother." Lily looked at him in surprise. For months, their conversations had been strictly about Sophia or practical matters. This was the first time he had shown personal interest in her life. "She was extraordinary," Lily began, and her eyes lit up as she spoke. "Very small, but strong as an oak. She raised 7 children practically alone when my grandfather fell ill. She taught me that women can be strong and gentle at the same time." Daniel watched as Lily's face softened when she spoke of her family, and he felt a pang of something that might have been envy. He had grown up in an orphanage until he was 16. He had never known that kind of unconditional love. "It must have been hard to leave all that to come to London," he commented. Lily nodded, mixing the formula with automatic movements. "But it was worth it, or at least, I thought so then. And what do you think now?" Lily paused and looked directly at him. "Now I believe everything happens for a reason. If I hadn't come to London, there would be no Sophia." The name of their daughter always seemed to create a bridge between them, neutral territory, where they could meet without the complications of their history. At that moment, Sophia began to cry from her room, and both automatically headed there. Daniel arrived first and picked up the baby with the ease he had developed in recent weeks. "Hello, princess," he murmured to her, and Sophia immediately calmed down. "Were you hungry?" Lily watched how Daniel held their daughter, how he spoke to her with a tenderness that dramatically contrasted with the cold man he had been months ago. Sophia seemed to recognize him, her small eyes following every movement of her father. "She looks like you when she makes that expression," Lily suddenly said. Daniel looked up, surprised. "Do you think so?" "Yes, that serious look you get when you're thinking about something important." It was the first time Lily had made a personal observation about him in months, and Daniel felt something stir in his chest. "I hope she has your character," Daniel said softly. "Your strength." Lily didn't respond, but she handed him the bottle and sat in the rocking chair Daniel had bought the week before. Daniel sat on the small sofa in the room, feeding Sophia while Lily watched them. "Daniel," Lily said after a while, and he looked up. "Have you ever thought about telling your family about Sophia?" Daniel tensed slightly. "I don't have family worth mentioning," he replied. "Not even your parents?" "Especially my parents," Daniel said, with a bitterness that surprised Lily. "If they're even still alive, I haven't seen them since I was 17. Lily processed this information, suddenly understanding something about Daniel she had never considered. The man who had built an empire from nothing, who seemed to have everything under control, had been as alone as she had felt during her pregnancy. "And you?" Daniel asked, changing the subject. "Do your parents know about Sophia?" Lily looked down. "I told them I had to suspend my studies due to health issues. They don't know about the baby." "Why not?" Lily took a moment to respond. "Because I promised them I would come home the same girl who left. And now I'm a single mother of a man who isn't even my boyfriend." The brutal honesty of Lily hit Daniel like a punch. He realized that she too had sacrificed a lot, had lost connection with her family for a decision he had made her feel like a mistake. "Lily," he began, but she stood up abruptly. "I'm going to make dinner," she said, and left the room before he could say anything else. Daniel was left alone with Sophia, who had finished her bottle and was now looking at him with those green eyes so similar to her mother's. For the first time, he wondered if he and Lily could have something more than this careful coexistence built around their daughter. But after all the damage he had caused, after all the months of distance, it was too late for anything real between them. A confession of love. One spring evening, when Sophia was 4 months old, Daniel arrived home after a particularly difficult meeting to find Lily crying silently in the kitchen while preparing dinner. She held a letter in her trembling hands. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately, alarmed. Lily tried to quickly wipe away her tears, but it was too late. "It's nothing," she murmured, trying to hide the letter. Daniel approached and gently took the letter from her hands. It was from her parents, written in her mother's careful handwriting. "Lily, can you read this?" he asked, confused by her tears. "My mother is sick," Lily said, her voice breaking. "She needs an operation, but they don't have money to pay for it." And she stopped, fighting back sobs. Daniel quickly read the letter. Lily's parents explained that Mrs. Mary needed urgent heart surgery, but they couldn't afford it. They asked Lily to come home. They needed her support. "How much does the operation cost?" Daniel asked without hesitation. "No," Lily said immediately. "You can't. You've already done too much." "Lily, it's your mother's health. And it's not your responsibility," she retorted. But Daniel saw the desperation in her eyes. "Let me help," Daniel insisted. "Please." Lily looked at him for a long moment, and Daniel saw her struggle between her pride and her love for her family. "I can't ask you that," she finally whispered. "You're not asking me. I'm offering it to you." That night, Daniel called his bank and arranged the transfer for Mrs. Mary's operation. Lily thanked him with a gratitude that overwhelmed him, but she also maintained a certain distance, as if she didn't know how to process his generosity. 2 days later, Lily received another call. The operation had been a success, and her mother was recovering well. When she hung up the phone, she sank onto the sofa next to Daniel, who was playing with Sophia. "Thank you," she said simply. But there was so much weight in that word that Daniel felt his chest tighten. "You don't have to thank me for anything," he replied. Lily took Sophia into her arms, and the baby smiled at her, one of those smiles she had recently started to give. "You know what?" Lily said suddenly. "When I was pregnant and you rejected me, I thought you were the cruelest man in the world." Daniel tensed, preparing for more recriminations. "But now," Lily continued, "seeing how you care for Sophia, how you helped my family without being asked, I think you were scared, just like me." Daniel looked at her in surprise. "More scared?" he admitted. "I had never felt anything as intense as what I felt that night with you. And when I found out you were pregnant, I was terrified." "Of what?" Daniel took a moment to respond, playing with Sophia's tiny fingers as he searched for the right words. "Of ruining it, of not being enough for you and for her, of repeating my parents' mistakes." Lily was silent for a moment. "What happened with your parents?" she asked softly. Daniel never talked about his past, but something in Lily's voice, in Sophia's warmth in her arms, made him feel safe. My father was an alcoholic, violent. My mother put up with him until I was 8. Then she abandoned both of us. I ended up in an orphanage when my father was finally arrested. Lily felt her heart break. She suddenly understood so much about Daniel, his need for control, his fear of intimacy, his initial rejection. "Daniel," she said softly, "you are not your father. How can you be sure?" Lily moved closer to him on the sofa, so close that she could smell his familiar cologne. "Because I've seen how you treat Sophia. Because you paid for my mother's operation without a second thought. Because that night we spent together, you were tender with me." Daniel looked up at her, and Lily saw vulnerability in his eyes. "That night," Daniel said slowly, "was the first time in my life I felt something real. And it terrified me so much that I preferred to hurt you rather than risk feeling more." The confession floated between them like a naked truth. Lily felt something stir in her chest, something she had buried for months. "And now?" she asked softly. "Does it still terrify you?" Daniel looked her directly in the eyes. "Yes," he admitted, "but I can't run anymore. I don't want to run." Lily felt tears well up in her eyes again, but this time they were not of sadness. "Daniel," she murmured, and her voice trembled with emotion. At that moment, Sophia began to make small noises, breaking the moment of tension between her parents. Both looked at her and laughed softly. "She has good timing," Daniel said. "Like her father," Lily replied, and it was the first time in months she had referred to him as Sophia's father, without tension. That night, for the first time since Sophia's birth, they had dinner together as a family. They didn't talk more about their conversation, but something fundamental had changed between them. The barriers were still there, but now they had cracks, and through those cracks, something that might have been hope began to filter. A future reimagined, the days following their conversation brought a new dynamic to the apartment. Daniel and Lily began to spend more time together, not just for Sophia, but because they genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Meals stretched longer, conversations deepened, and slowly, very slowly, they began to truly get to know each other. One afternoon, as Lily studied in the living room with Sophia sleeping in her lap, Daniel arrived home from work earlier than usual. Instead of heading directly to his office, he sat on the sofa opposite her. "How are your studies going?" he asked, noticing she had pedagogy books scattered across the table. "Good," Lily replied, but Daniel noticed a certain melancholy in her voice. "I'm trying to catch up so I can go back next semester. Do you still want to go back to your village to teach?" Lily looked up from her books and directly at him. "It's my dream," she said, but it no longer sounded as convinced as before. "But," Lily sighed, gently stroking Sophia's hair, "but things have changed. Before it was just my dream. Now I have to think about Sophia, about her future. In London, she has more opportunities." Daniel felt a pang of something he didn't expect. He didn't want Lily to leave. The idea of losing her and Sophia filled him with panic. "What if you didn't have to choose?" he suddenly asked. "What do you mean?" Daniel leaned forward with an intensity that made Lily straighten up. "What if you could teach here? I have contacts at several private schools in London. I could help you get a position when you finish your studies." Lily studied him for a long moment. "Why would you do that?" Daniel took time to respond, because the answer scared even him. "Because I don't want you to leave," he finally admitted. "Because in these months, I've come to depend on having you here, both of you." Lily's heart raced. It was the closest to a declaration of feeling Daniel had made since that night months ago. Daniel began, but he interrupted her. I know I have no right to ask you to stay. I know I hurt you. But these last few months, seeing what kind of mother you are, truly getting to know who you are." He stopped, struggling with the words. "What?" Lily gently prompted him. "I've fallen in love with you," he finally said. And the words came out like a confession torn from the depths of his soul. "Not just with the mother of my child, but with you, your strength, your kindness, the way you sing to Sophia, how you challenge me when you think I'm wrong." Lily felt her breath catch. She had awaited this confession and feared it at the same time. "Daniel, you don't have to say anything," he quickly added. "I just wanted you to know. I wanted you to know that if you give me a chance, I'll do everything I can to be the man you and Sophia deserve." Lily looked at the baby sleeping in her arms, then at Daniel, who watched her with a vulnerability that broke her heart. "Do you know what the hardest part of being pregnant was?" she finally asked. Daniel shook his head. "It wasn't the nausea or the tiredness, not even the birth. It was the night after Sophia was born, when I saw you hold her for the first time. I saw the love in your eyes, and I realized I had fallen in love with you too." Daniel remained completely still. "But I also realized," Lily continued, "that you only loved Sophia, and I thought I would have to live with that forever." "Lily," Daniel whispered, and moved towards her on the sofa. "These last few months have been confusing," Lily admitted. "Seeing you take care of Sophia, seeing you be kind to me after everything that happened, I started to wonder if, perhaps, what?" Lily looked up at him, and Daniel saw tears in her eyes. "If perhaps I hadn't been so wrong that night. If perhaps I had truly seen something in you that was worth loving." Daniel reached out and gently caressed Lily's cheek. "You weren't wrong," he murmured. "You were the first person to see something good in me, and I was so scared that I preferred to hurt you rather than believe it could be true." Lily closed her eyes at his caress, feeling her heart open after months of keeping it closed. "What do we do now?" she asked softly. "We start over," Daniel replied. "Slowly, as it should be." When Lily opened her eyes, she saw in Daniel's a promise she had been waiting for months, without daring to truly hope for it. For the first time since that night that had changed everything, she allowed herself to imagine a future where she wouldn't have to choose between her love for Daniel and her dignity. A future where they could truly be a family, a new beginning. 2 weeks after their mutual confession, just when it seemed they had finally found a path forward, Lily received a call that would change everything once more. "Lily, my dear," her mother's voice sounded weak, but determined on the phone. "Your father and I have been talking. We want to meet our granddaughter." Lily felt her heart stop. For months, she had kept Sophia a secret, inventing excuses to explain why she couldn't go home. Now, her parents had decided to make the trip from their village to London. "Mom, you're barely recovering from the operation." "I'm fine, my child. And we need to talk. There are things a mother knows, and I know you've been hiding something important from me." That night, Lily told Daniel about the call. He was giving Sophia her nighttime bottle when Lily entered the baby's room with a worried expression. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately upon seeing her face. "My parents are coming to London. Tomorrow," Lily said, sitting heavily in the rocking chair. Daniel tensed. "Do they know about Sophia?" "My mother suspects. And when they see her," Lily put her hands to her face. "Daniel, my parents are very traditional, very religious. They're going to be devastated." Daniel finished feeding Sophia and put her in her crib. Then he approached Lily. "We'll tell them the truth," he simply said. "The truth?" Lily looked at him in a panic. "That I slept with my boss and got pregnant? That we're not married or engaged? They're going to think you're human," Daniel interrupted her, taking her hands. and they're going to see that you're an extraordinary mother." "You don't understand," Lily said, pulling away. "For them, this is a disgrace. I come from a family where women marry as virgins in the village church, and you had the courage to go through it alone when I was a coward," Daniel finished. "Lily, you have nothing to be ashamed of." But Lily didn't seem convinced. That night she slept restlessly, and Daniel heard her get up several times to check on Sophia. The next day, when Mr. and Mrs. Green arrived, the tension was palpable. Lily had decided to meet them at a coffee shop near the apartment without mentioning anything about Sophia until she could assess the situation. Daniel stayed home with the baby, waiting for news. When Lily returned 3 hours later, her eyes were swollen from crying. "What happened?" Daniel asked immediately. "My mother knew," Lily said, her voice breaking. "A mother always knows," she said, "but when I told them, Daniel, my father didn't speak to me, and my mother—" She stopped, fighting back tears. "What did your mother say?" Daniel asked. "She asked if Sophia's father was going to take responsibility, if we were going to get married." Daniel felt something shrink in his chest. "And what did you tell them?" Lily looked at him with an expression he couldn't interpret. "I told them Sophia's father loved her, but that the situation was complicated." That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Daniel stayed awake thinking. He had seen the pain in Lily's eyes when she talked about her parents' reaction. He had noticed how she had emotionally retreated, as if she had suddenly remembered all the reasons why their relationship was impossible. The next day, Lily announced that she had made a decision. "I'm going to go back to the village with my parents," she said, as she packed Sophia's things. "What?" Daniel felt as if he had been punched. "It's for the best. Sophia and I can live with my parents while I finish my studies remotely. I can teach at the village school. It's where we belong. Lily, you can't leave. Not like this." Lily stopped packing and looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Why not? Because now you decide you love me?" "Daniel, this is never going to work. We're from 2 different worlds." "That's not true." "Yes, it is!" Lily shouted, and it was the first time Daniel had seen her completely lose control. "You're a successful London businessman. I'm a village girl who made the mistake of falling in love with her boss. My parents are right. This is a disgrace." Daniel moved closer to her, desperate. "Lily, please, don't let fear decide for you. Not like I did." Lily looked at him for a long moment, and Daniel saw in her eyes all the pain she had accumulated for months. "It's not fear, Daniel. It's realism. Sophia deserves to grow up in a place where they're not ashamed of the circumstances of her birth. And I need to be sure that if I'm with you, it's because you truly love me, not because you feel guilty. How can you doubt it after everything we've been through?" "Because," Lily said with a broken but determined voice, "I need to know you're capable of fighting for me, for us, not just when it's convenient, but when it's hard." The next day, Lily left with her parents, taking Sophia. Daniel stayed in the empty apartment, feeling more lost than he had ever felt. But as he looked at the room where they had cared for their daughter together, where they had shared silent breakfasts and deep conversations, Daniel realized that Lily was right. It was time to prove that his love was real, that he was willing to fight for her even when the whole world was against him. The ultimate proof. Daniel gave Lily a week before following her. A week for her to settle in, for her to calm her parents, for her to think, but also a week for him to prepare for what he knew would be the most important conversation of his life. The journey from London to the Cotswolds took him 4 hours of winding roads through landscapes that became more rural and beautiful with each mile. When he finally arrived at the small English village, he immediately understood why Lily spoke of it with so much love. It was a place where time seemed to move more slowly, where stone houses nestled against the hills as if they had grown from the earth itself. The church dominated the central square, and Daniel could easily imagine Lily as a child running through those narrow streets. He found the Green family home by asking at the small village shop. It was a modest but well-kept house, with flowers in the windows and a blue-painted wooden door. When he knocked, it was Mr. Thomas who opened. He was a man of medium height, with hands toughened by work, and eyes that Daniel immediately noticed were the same green as Lily's and Sophia's. "Mr. Thomas?" Daniel asked, and the man nodded warily. "I'm Daniel Harrison, Sophia's father." Mr. Thomas's expression hardened. "What do you want here?" "I want to speak with you and Mrs. Mary about Lily and about my daughter." Mr. Thomas studied him for a long moment. Then he stepped aside to let him in. The house was small but cozy, filled with family photographs and the aroma of something delicious cooking. Mrs. Mary appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. She was small, as Lily had said of her grandmother, but Daniel immediately saw the strength in her eyes. "You must be Daniel," she simply said. "Yes, ma'am." "Sit down," Mr. Thomas said gruffly, "but don't expect us to welcome you as a guest." Daniel sat on the floral fabric sofa, feeling completely out of place, but determined not to give up. "Mr. Thomas, Mrs. Mary," he began, "I know I have a lot to explain." "There's nothing to explain," Mr. Thomas interrupted. "You dishonored our daughter, and now you come here. For what? To take her away again?" "I've come to ask for Lily's hand in marriage," Daniel said directly, and the silence that followed was absolute. Mrs. Mary slowly sat in her chair, studying Daniel with keen eyes. "Now?" she finally asked. After months of estrangement, Daniel took a deep breath. "Ma'am, I'm not here to make excuses. I'm here to tell you the truth. When what happened, I was a coward. I was 42, but emotionally, I was a scared child." Mr. Thomas crossed his arms, clearly unimpressed. "Lily was a 19-year-old girl working for me," Daniel continued. "Virgin, innocent, full of dreams. And I seduced her, and then rejected her because I was afraid of what I felt." "And what did you feel?" Mrs. Mary asked softly. Daniel looked at her directly. "Love. For the first time in my life, true love, and it terrified me. You don't love our daughter," Mr. Thomas said harshly. "You used her?" "No," Daniel replied firmly. "I fell in love with her that first night, with her kindness, her purity, her strength. But I had grown up without love, without family, and I didn't know how to handle it." Mrs. Mary leaned forward. "And now you do?" "Now I know that Lily is the most extraordinary woman I have ever met. That she raised our daughter practically alone while I fought my own demons. That she gave me a second chance when I didn't deserve it." "Where is Lily?" Daniel asked after a moment. "In the church," Mrs. Mary replied. "With Sophia. She goes there to think." Daniel stood up. "Can I go see her?" Mr. Thomas and Mrs. Mary exchanged a look. "Young man," Mr. Thomas finally said, "if you hurt our daughter again, you'll have to deal with me." Daniel nodded solemnly. "If I hurt her again, I deserve it." The village church was small and old, with stained glass windows that filtered the afternoon light in golden and blue colors. Daniel found Lily sitting on a pew near the altar, with Sophia asleep in her arms. When she saw Daniel approaching down the central aisle, Lily felt her heart stop. "What are you doing here?" she asked softly, so as not to wake the baby. Daniel sat next to her, and for a moment they simply sat in silence, watching their daughter sleep. "I came to ask you to marry me," he finally said. Lily closed her eyes. "Daniel." "No," he gently interrupted. "Let me finish. I came to tell you that you're right, that you needed to be sure that I'm capable of fighting for you, that I'm here not because I feel guilty, but because I can't live without you." Lily opened her eyes and looked at him. "I just spoke with your parents," Daniel continued. "I formally asked for your hand, as I should have done from the beginning. What did they say?" "Your father threatened me. Your mother asked me questions I couldn't fully answer. But they both made me understand that if I truly love you, I'll have to prove it every day for the rest of my life." Lily felt tears beginning to stream down her cheeks. "Daniel, my parents will never fully accept what happened. Then we'll have to prove to them that it was worth it," Daniel said, gently taking her free hand. "Lily, I want us to get married here, in this church. I want Sophia to grow up knowing her grandparents, knowing her roots. I want us to have more children if you want. I want to build a life with you where both of us can be who we truly are." Lily looked at him through her tears. "And your company? Your life in London? I can work from anywhere. And if that means moving to the Cotswolds to be close to your family, I'll do it. If it means building a new school in the village so you can teach here, I'll do it. Lily, I'll do whatever it takes to prove that my love for you is real." Lily looked at Sophia, who was sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the drama unfolding around her. "Are you sure?" she finally asked. "Really sure? Because I can't go through this again. I can't trust you again only to be rejected." Daniel slid off the pew and knelt in front of her in the church aisle. "Lily Green," he said, and his voice broke with emotion. "I love you. I love your strength. I love your kindness. I love the way you sing to our daughter. I love how you challenge me when I'm wrong and how you forgive me when I don't deserve it. Will you marry me?" Lily felt her heart fill with a happiness she hadn't thought possible. "Yes," she whispered, and then louder. "Yes, Daniel, I will marry you." When Daniel stood up to kiss her, Sophia woke and looked at them with those green eyes that had united her parents from the beginning, as if she knew they had finally found their way home. The power of genuine love. 6 months later, in the same church where Daniel had declared his love, Lily Green married Daniel Harrison. She wore her mother's wedding dress, and Sophia, now 10 months old, was carried down the aisle by her grandfather, Mr. Thomas, who had come to respect, if not fully love, the man who had won his daughter's heart. As the priest declared them husband and wife, Lily knew that every tear, every moment of pain, every instant of doubt had been worth it. Because now she had not only the man she loved, but a complete family, a place where she belonged, and the certainty that true love, when it's real, always finds a way to triumph. And as Daniel kissed her beneath the colorful stained glass windows, with Sophia clapping from her grandmother's arms, Lily knew their story was just beginning. What did you think of the story? Let us know your opinion in the comments. We love to hear what you think. Don't forget to like the video to support us and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.